This episode is exclusively brought to you by an amazing record label called The Native Sound. For 10%, that's right, 10% off of your order, type in 100 words at their website, thenativesound.com. Here's the show. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins, as always, joining you on this beautiful morning in Southern California. Holy crap, last episode got a ton of feedback, a ton of new listeners from what I imagine people that have never checked out the show. So if you are listening to a second episode, thank you for joining us. And if you missed last week's, dude, jump back, listen to it. Roman Mars, so good. But the guest this week is Taylor Madison from a band called Superheaven, which was previously known as Daylight. More on him in a minute. Let's get some business shenanigans out of the way. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, The Native Sound is an amazing record label from Brooklyn. Julio, great dude, decided to support this show and contribute some awesome music for you to listen. Right now, a future guest on the show, Koji, has an EP called Some Small Way. That's a reissue from an EP that came out on Run for Cover. It's available on vinyl for the very first time. It's 180 gram, new art, 2 digital bonus songs. If you've seen Superheaven live, you undoubtedly have tripped across Koji at some point. This separate release is called Matters. It's a cassette. It's on its second pressing, and it sold out in just a couple hours. Basically, Koji's got a lot of rad stuff going on with the Native Sound. And, let's listen to a track off of that. A little sample. So here you go.
Running out of room. We're running out of time. I'm shoveling dirt. I'm moving ground so I can hide. Every now and then, I feel the walls come closing in. I do my best to disappear. I am the sum of all my fears. Oh, sometimes what courage is as courage does, but will I keep coming short? Wasted all the time that I was looking for. Wasted all the time that I was looking for.
So there you go. That track was called Color Quiet. Again, it's off of Some Small Way, a reissue by The Native Sound by the artist Koji. You can get 10% off of that awesome release, plus whatever else you decide to pick up over there, by using the coupon code 100 words. So type it in their website and they will give you a discount. It's awesome because, he is a small boutique record label. So for him to do this, that's a big deal. So go over there, thenativesound.com, and order. Anyways, so people were generous enough to mention us and donate. I can't thank you enough for this. Jacqueline, Lucy, and Tim McCormick, thank you so much for contributing to the show. It really means the world to me and the show that you feel like this is worth something. If you want to donate, go on 100 Words Podcast, follow the prompt on the right side of the screen, and you'll be able to donate to whatever you decide to do. And, I send stuff out to everybody that donates. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Visit propertyofzach.com. I'm actually doing a new experiment with like a weekly digest of 100 Words, the podcast, like links, and I give kind of behind the scenes stories about what happened at the interviews, and just, kind of add more context because, email newsletters allow you to do that. So if you want to do that, you can find a sign up at the right side of the page. And if you ever email me just randomly, I'll probably add you to that. So don't hate me if I do that. I want to make mention also a great new band, a regular friend and emailer of the show, Mildura. Google them, find them on Bandcamp. They have a new EP. It's great. Just do that. But anyways, enough plugging, enough mentioning. The real reason we're here, Taylor from Daylight. He's the lead vocalist and guitarist. And we tried to record this once a long time ago, got derailed due to some technical difficulties, but now we're locked in. We did it. He got Skype. were so professional about that. It was cool because I know he's been asked many times about why the band has changed their name. We're able to get in depth with that, just kind of the processes of it and just kind of the mental anguish that it takes on you. So I don't know, we went into that. We talk about step parents. We talk about online media and social media. So much fun stuff. The band is great. They just announced that they signed to Side One Dummy Records, so expect a new record coming sooner rather than later. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Taylor. I'll talk to you. You and your music and that sort of stuff. It was before you guys played Sound and Fury, but it was when you released the 10-inch.
Right.
And it was one of those things where I immediately fell in love with it because I was like, yo, these dudes are ripping off Small Brown Bike, and that's awesome because no one does that. In a good way, obviously, not in a disparaging way. But I definitely thought that you guys coming out west and playing Sound and Fury was basically the only time I was going to be able to see you guys, because so many bands do like one full US tour and like maybe get like, you know, an EP or two out, maybe a full length, and then kind of implode just because it's hard being in a band.
Yeah.
Did you, when you guys came out west, was there ever a point of like, this thing is cool, we need to keep going, or man, this is hard to keep together?
It was a little bit of both, only because like Joe and John had already toured like all over the country with other bands, and we'd been on tour a couple times before that, but not a full US. Just the way the band was at the time, we were kind of just like, I mean, I don't think we really give a crap now, but like then we gave far less of a crap. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I didn't know what we were doing. Even now, I don't think we're like in the know of everything and how to be a band or whatever. But then it was just like we just would play every night, and most of the shows on that tour kind of suck.
Yeah, just
because we were a new band and we expected them to, and we toured by ourselves. It's not like we were like supporting a bigger band or anything like that. And so there was definitely some discouraging moments on that tour. It was like, wow, man, this shit sucks. We knew that going into it. Like we've never been one of those bands that kind of like puts out a demo and it gets like tons of attention and then we become a pretty popular band, without using the term hype band or anything like that. For lack of a better term, I'll use the term hype.
Yeah.
You've never been like a real hype band. Like it's been kind of like a slow climb. Which is fine, you know, because I think bands can get pretty burnt out when they get kind of popular really fast, and then they don't kind of go through that like learning thing where like they don't put in the work, I guess, is what I'm saying. Like, yeah, which that's fine. Like, best of luck to bands that catch on immediately. That's super cool. It wasn't like that for us, so we just kind of knew what the deal was from the beginning. We were just kind of like, well, no one really cares that much. Like a couple people express interest, right? And we're playing this fest in California, and that's cool. We played, and it was cool. By the time we got back home, I think all of us were kind of like, yeah, let's keep touring and stuff. But at the same time, we were kind of like realistic about it. We weren't like, oh man, like let's do this and let's do this. John was like starting a business. Our old drummer John was like starting a business around the same time. So stuff was really slow with us in the beginning. Like I think people didn't think of us as like a touring band for a while, because we really toured like a couple times a year, if that.
You hit on an interesting thing that I think that a lot of people, not only in bands, but then just the outside music world in general, don't pay attention to, is the fact that the rise that you were describing in regards to, you know, you guys, where it was a slow build and it was gradual, and you kind of, you know, you made the mistakes that you needed to make early as a band. When you don't have an opportunity to kind of do things on your own with like virtually no one paying attention, and then when you make these, you know, missteps or whatever, either from a business perspective or just like being a band, so many people will pay attention to that. It's like that gradual build gives you a chance to, you know, be a stupid band for a longer period of time in order to like develop, which is good.
I mean, I just think like, and when I say slow climb, I don't mean like, yeah, man, it's been a long ride, but here we are. You know, like it still is like, it's still really hard for us to play shows by ourselves when we're not supporting a bigger band and have it not be kind of whatever. Like we'll play certain shows in certain places and it'll be really cool. But we're, you know, I by no means, like I've gotten in a couple, like, I don't want to say debates with a few kids, but they'll be like, oh yeah, like, you know, they'll ask me questions like, what's it like to be in a successful band? And I'm like, shit, man, I don't know. Ask someone in like the Wonder Years or something like that, because I don't consider our band a successful band. I think we have a few like cool achievements under our belt, but like I think my idea of a successful band is someone who pays their rent with their band, and none of us do that. So
right, yeah,
you know what I mean. So like we're pretty broke individually, and like that's fine. Like we don't we never like complain about like, oh man, you know, it's like so hard to be in a band, this and that. It's just like, nah, man, being in a band is cool, and that's why we are in a band. But
you're focused on that. Everything that you build around the band, like your lifestyle, and from, you know, like you said, the lack of money, like that's intentional. As it's like, well, yeah. we're broke because that's dedicating ourselves to this band.
Yeah. But yeah, I've gotten plenty of conversations where people are like, you know, a couple of people, like kids on the internet, like just like weird, like anonymous Tumblr questions and stuff like that will be like giving me a hard time, like you don't appreciate like what you have as a band. And I'm like, yo man, slow down. Like I didn't, you know, I've never said I'm not thankful for the opportunities that we've had, but I just don't, in my mind, when I think of a successful band, I think of like I said, you at least got to be paying bills from the band. If you're doing a tour, and like, I think if you're playing in front of a minimum of 300 people consecutively every night, that's what I would consider like a successful band. Anything under that, I feel like is like, yeah, they do well. They pretty popular band, but success has a different meaning to me.
Sure. Well, and then you also have to look at the notion too of the trajectory that you guys are headed is hopefully that you will obviously get there to where it's like, yeah, you're solid, you know, you can draw 300 to 400 people a night across the country, and then your level of success will change. You know, you yourself will be like, okay, well now the next level that we're looking for is like, hey, now we're going to be able to draw 700, 800 people, and it is. Yeah. But it's like, it's funny when people project on you the idea of what your definition of success is.
Yeah. People, I feel like that's a very ongoing thing, especially in the past couple of years with Twitter and bands having Facebooks and stuff, is that kids can say whatever the hell they want. So like they will not hesitate to kind of like make really ignorant statements without thinking about what they're accusing you of or something like that. And I find it really hard to kind of like keep my cool in that situation. And like, obviously the best thing to do if like someone says some ignorant thing on the internet to you or about you and you see it, obviously the wisest thing to do is to not even respond to it. But I've been known to get baited into like weird arguments with kids I don't know.
To me, you have a sense of humor, and the time that we've spent together, I would never define you as an angry person. You're just the type of person that likes to point out the the flaws in someone's argument or whatever, because that's fun for you probably.
It depends. Like I think a lot of people that don't know me personally think of me as this very someone who almost like enjoys confrontation. It's really not like that. Like I really don't like arguing with people. I have no problem kind of like making fun of people like lightheartedly, because like I say all the time, like I say I talk a whole lot of shit on Twitter and stuff like that, and a lot of times I'll say like, yo, like I say a lot of this stuff, but my opinion doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like, right. I'll say a lot of stuff, and like, you know, like if you're into, I can't even think of one thing that I make fun of.
Right.
But I say a lot of stuff is corny and this and that. But you know, I'm like, you know, if horseback riding if I'm making fun of horseback riding, which I've never done, but if horseback riding is your thing and you're like reading these tweets like, hey man, like this motherfucker's coming out horseback riding right now and that's like my favorite thing, like that's fine, man. Like I make fun of stuff and that's just because I think it's funny. But if people think that what I'm saying is like offensive or anything like that, like they just need to keep in mind like I'm just some dumbass who has like a kind of like a loud opinion about things. Like it doesn't actually matter.
Right. Yeah. To take everything I say with a grain of salt, because what you talk crap on could be something that I also am really passionate about, and that's fine. I'll let you be. Just let me.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just think that people get very upset when I'll like I'll tweet about something and someone will tweet back and be like, they'll get in like looking for like sort of an argument or a debate about it. I'm like, dude, I'm not really looking to like debate it. I just think it's corny. So,
Right.
so I said that. Like, I don't really understand like having a Twitter if you're not going to kind of like say dumb stuff. And like, you know, because I feel like the everyday person who has Twitter, mostly like, you know, like parents have Twitter and shit. And like, I'm wondering why, because what are they like? Oh, cooking dinner for the kids.
Yep.
Lol. No one wants to read that.
No,
You know what I mean?
totally.
I mean, people might not want to read my Twitter either, but at the same time, like, I feel like a couple people are like, oh man, like they'll be like, come up to me at a show and be like, oh man, your Twitter's so funny, man. I'm like, that's cool, you know, like I'm just a real bored guy and I have a lot of things going on in my head at all times, and usually I'll just be sitting there and something dumb will come to my mind, or I'll see something like the other day I tweeted about how I think it's really weird when people put a lot of stickers on their car. I know people that put a lot of stickers on their car, and I know that they'll get personally offended by making fun of people who put a lot of stickers on their car.
Mm-hmm.
I don't actually care if people put stickers on their car. I just think that's really...
You're like, this is not... I'm not making this decision for myself, but I'm not stopping you from doing that.
Yeah, but something dumb like that will come across my mind, and I'm like, yeah, I got to address that via Twitter.
Right. I mean, I definitely think it's an important point in regards to the nature of this. Hits a point that I was going to bring up later, but I think it's a good time to bring it up, where the attitude that, you know, you've always at least presented to, you know, the outside world in regards to, especially about, you know, hey, what does your song mean and what do these lyrics mean? You're very cut and dry, where it's like, hey, this song means this and don't take it any other way. Is that also in part of the, just like, you obviously can't control what people interpret out of your art, but, you know, is that a way for you to be like, hey, I want to try to control some of this conversation to where it's like, I want these songs to mean this. That's why I put them out there.
With the songs and stuff like that, like, I feel like our earlier records, like the lyrics were very literal. Like they literally couldn't be taken any other way.
Right.
And they were all basically about the same thing. And then once we got to like writing the LP and stuff like that, it was kind of like, I mean, it started happening a little bit before that. Songs would be more about specific things. But once we got to writing the LP, we were like, okay, well, we can't write the songs about all the same things. I wanted the lyrics to be less literal, but at the same time, like they're clearly about something specific. So like, I have no issue when people ask like, hey, like, what does that mean? Or what is that song about? Like, I've never had a problem being like telling them straight up what it's about. I know people like to like be like, oh, well, I like my songs to be open to interpretation. Well, I'm like, that's cool. But like, these songs are about like a specific thing. So like some people are like, oh man, I want to thank you for that song. Like it's so relevant to my life. And I'm just kind of like, that's really cool and flattering, but like, I sort of doubt it. You know what I mean? Like there's some stuff where I'm just like, there's no way that song is relevant to what is going on in your life. And if it is, that's pretty crazy.
Because that is literally what I went through, like word for word.
Yeah. Which is cool. Like some people are like, oh man, like, I'll see someone put something on the internet with like lyrics to a certain song and they're just like #relevant. Really? Like my biggest pet peeve with lyrics and stuff like that is people can kind of like take it whatever way they want. But my biggest issue is when I see like a review of one of our records, mm-hmm. they'll like take it upon themselves to kind of like post what they think the song is about, but they'll post it like, rather than be like, I think this song is about this, to be like, this song is about this.
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
Dude, no, it's not. Like one of the songs was like about a conversation with my dad, and it was like, I won't go into like detail, but like I saw a review of it. This is a couple years ago, and it was like, oh yeah, like talking to his dad about how like he wants his dad to like understand. He just wants to like follow his dreams and like be in a band. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how you got that from the song, but that's not even close. But it's weird that you posted that in your, you know, on your blog as if it was like, as if you interviewed me and I told you that.
Right. Yeah, like word
that's
for word.
That's the only issue I have.
Right.
People can take whatever they want from the songs, but I just don't like when people like say what the songs are about without asking.
Right. They're essentially making it up. I mean, they're taking their own interpretation of it and making it the quote unquote truth.
Yeah.
And the you know, kind of going back to you yourself, you were born and raised in the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
Where in particular?
I've never lived very far outside of where I live now. Mm. I live in Quakertown, Pennsylvania, which is like basically within like a 20-mile radius of where I currently live my whole life. So I've moved kind of a lot. It's always been pretty close by. Like I've lived my parents have been divorced since I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always had like two homes, and both my parents have moved a lot, but they always live about within like 45 minutes from each other. So I've lived in a lot of different places, but they're all basically within the Philadelphia suburbs area.
Right. When your parents split, and I mean, it sounds like it was intentional that they kind of still lived in the same area. Was it because they obviously both wanted to, be a part of your life, or was that just kind of happenstance that they kept staying close to one another?
I'm sure it was like a little bit of both. Like, my parents have always had a really good relationship with each other.
Uh-huh.
Like, divorce is pretty like, I was like, I think not even 2 years old when they like split up. So like, I really don't remember anything but my parents being divorced. So like, my parents being divorced has never been like a hard topic for me, or like anything that I looked at with any like negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Just because my parents have always been really friendly with each other. Like, I've never even heard my parents argue to this day. Like,
there's never been any outward strife that has caused you to be like, whoa, this could be traumatizing.
yeah, exactly. Like, people will be like, oh, my parents are divorced, like blah, blah, blah. Like honestly, you see like in these movies and stuff like that. And I'm sure divorce is really hard on some kids and stuff like that. And like, when you see it in movies and like, oh, like my parents are getting divorced, and it's looked at like this, like crazy, like, oh man, that sucks, like I'm so sorry. That's always been sort of foreign to me, just because my parents getting divorced never affected me one bit, which I think is really lucky to have not been affected by it negatively. But yeah, my parents have always had a good relationship, so I'm sure they were both kind of like, I don't know if it was an intentional decision, like we should live close together, but I don't think either one of them would have moved anywhere very far away otherwise.
Sure.
Because they both grew up in this area. My mom's from West Virginia, but she moved to Pennsylvania when she was in like high school or middle school or something like that. So like, but who the hell is going to move back to West Virginia?
Yeah, once you get out, you're out of West Virginia.
But yeah, I've always I think it was just like a little bit of both. Like, it was inconvenient to live too far away.
Sure.
And neither one of them had any intentions of moving far away anyway.
Right. And so then as you were growing up, what kind of kid did you find yourself being? Like, once you started to, develop your own personality from like, junior high and high school and stuff like that, the easy label that I could throw on you just from your, from what I know of you and your outside perspective is, being the sort of smart aleck kid in the back of the classroom, cutting up jokes to their friends, or, making fun of a teacher or something like that. Was that the case, or did you find yourself, being a different person?
I feel like it's been like really different since I was younger. Like, when I was in kindergarten, I was a model student. I couldn't have been more well behaved. And then when I was in first grade, because like I said, I've moved a lot. So like, I've been like to a few different schools and school districts. So after kindergarten, I moved and went to a different school for first grade. And I was fine in first grade. Like, I didn't really know anyone around where we lived. And when you're in first grade, like, how many people do you really know anyway?
Right.
I really just hung out with my mom. That sounds super, super lame, but
no,
I didn't hang out with any friends outside of school. So in first grade, I did my homework and did my schoolwork and this and that. And then we moved again. And then second grade, I went to a new school. I think that's when I started getting sort of like problems with actual schoolwork. Like, I wasn't misbehaved or anything like that. I was pretty shy and just kind of quiet, I guess.
Okay.
But I had a hard time with doing actual schoolwork, and it wasn't because I was like didn't understand it or like couldn't do it. I just didn't want to do it. I guess I had a hard time like focusing on certain stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I was like very hyper or anything like that. I would just sit there and just be like, I'm not really about this.
Right.
But I was too young to be like, I'm not going to do this. So I would just do it, and like, I would rarely do homework, and that was like a big problem. And then, so in third grade, like, my parents would have to like come into like school meetings and stuff like that with my teachers, and they'd be like, yeah, he's not dumb. He's actually pretty bright. He never does his homework, and like, he's just kind of like, he's very slow with doing his work in school. And so there was this period when I was in elementary school where they kind of were like, well, what do we do with him? Like, he's not like special needs. I wasn't smart enough to be in like the real smart kid classes. Mm-hmm. They were like, his reading comprehension is fine. He's like, his math is fine. And they're just like, there's really nothing wrong with, like, he has no learning disabilities. He just doesn't do his work.
Right. You just,
And
I think they call that lazy.
yeah, I guess, but like I don't remember being like feel like doing this. I was just like I don't like this at all, and so I would just kind of like I don't know. I really don't know how to explain it, but that was like an issue all the way up until I was in like really all the way. My whole school career was like that, but it progressively got worse.
Sure.
And so in middle school, I think like I kind of like middle school is when I got into like punk and stuff like that. And it wasn't the kind of thing where I was like, I'm punk now, so like I'm bad.
Right.
It was like I just kind of like even when I was in elementary school, I was like very shy and pretty quiet, but I didn't like my dad has always been like, you know, like don't take shit from anyone just because they think that they can like give you shit. And I feel like he like ingrained this in me when I was younger because I was kind of like I think he thought I was like a real wimp when I was a little kid because I was very like cash about everything. I was just like pretty quiet. I hung out with myself the most of my childhood. I wasn't an only child, but like last time I told you about the action figure thing where like I played with action figures way too long. Yeah.
You were bringing them to like high school, weren't you?
No, not high school. Jeez.
Well, no, I remember you telling me that, but I don't remember the age at which you dropped off.
No, it was like 5th grade where my friends were like, dude, I don't know about the action figures at school, man. You know what I mean? Like, because like I told you before, I was very in inside recess. Like my whole life, I've never been that into sports. And I don't consider myself super unathletic. I never cared about sports. Like I don't like watching sports. I don't really care about playing them is a different story. Like I'll play sports with my friends sometimes. Play sports. See, no one says that.
Sure.
No one says, yeah, I play sports with my friends.
Right.
So, like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
no, for sure.
But yeah, so I was real into inside recess and shit like that. Like when it would rain, I was like, oh hell yeah,
yeah,
I can draw and play with my action figures.
Right, because you could. Well, I mean, it sounds like you know, for lack of a better term, it's like you were introverted, but not to the point where you were like antisocial, but you really relished the time that you could spend kind of, you know, creating your own sort of, you know, universes, whether it was like, you know, the worlds you were building for your action figures or, you know, I mean, because I say that because that is totally me. Like it just sounds like a sad thing, but it's like my mom would 100% like leave me in this like walk-in closet for hours, not because she just wanted to like leave me alone, but it was because I was just having so much fun with my G.I. Joes. It'd be like 3 hours and my mom would come check on me and I'm like, I'm fine. And this is when I was like, you know, whatever, 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And it's I love that. So I can totally understand where you're coming from.
So yeah, so around 5th grade, my friends were like, listen, man, I don't know about the action figures, you know, like
right.
we're getting into chicks and like you're kind of just like you're making us look a little bad. And I was like, oh shit, like I guess I suspected like people didn't like people I don't think there was ever a point when I was in school where I was like uncool. You know what I mean? Like I was never like popular or cool or anything like that. But I don't remember a point where I was like people would like pick on me.
Yeah.
Or anything.
You were like an outsider, like, oh man, I guess I'll just stay in the corner and listen to my music.
I just chilled. Like I didn't really have a thing. Like I was into drawing and stuff like that, but I never had like a thing where like people were like, oh, that's Taylor. That's like the weird kid or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I was just chilled. And then when I was in middle school, that's when I started getting, well, in elementary school, there was a few instances where I was like suspended, but it was the kind of thing where like I said, my dad would be like, you know, don't take any crap from anyone. I guess that was like in my head. My dad's not like a big, like, I don't really know what word I want to use, but he's not like a real aggro guy where he's like, you know,
like alpha male.
Yeah. He's not like that at all. Like he thinks he's super cool, but he's like, he is cool, but he's like not, he's very chill. He's not like, you know, like he doesn't condone getting in fights, but he's like, you know, if someone messes with you, like, don't tell on them. You know what I mean? Like stand up for yourself and you'll be good. So, I mean, there was a few times where I got in fights in elementary school. I got suspended for it. And I remember being one of the first kids in school that got like straight up suspended, and people were like, yo, that's crazy. Like you would have thought that like I went to jail to other people but I got in like a fist fight with this kid in recess, and we had like the recess ladies, and they came up and they broke it up and they're like, all right, you guys got to go to the principal's office. And I remember walking to the principal's office with this kid, and he was like, yo, he's like, when we get there, let's just say that like we were just messing around and we won't get in trouble, because he like really didn't want to get in trouble.
Right.
And I said, fuck that. I remember it vividly.
Right.
I remember vividly walking down the halls in school and saying, fuck that. And he was like, damn, dude, I guess we're just getting in trouble because you don't want to go along with the thing. And I was just like, fuck it, man. I remember in my head, I was like, dude, there's no way I'm going to say I was, because for some reason I had it in my head, like, this guy's not my friend. Like, I'm not going to act like this guy's my friend. Like, he started this thing. He's getting in trouble and I'm getting in trouble too. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like we went in the principal's office and I was like, yo, this motherfucker was picking on me, this and that. I was just like, yeah, like we got in a fight. And I was probably in like 4th or 5th grade when this happened. And then like I got suspended for it. And that kid really didn't like me the rest of ever. I'm sure the last time I saw him, he didn't like me.
Right.
But I feel like that was the first time that I got like in trouble, and my parents are like, "Oh shit! Like, dude, is this gonna be like a thing? Like, is this gonna be like a problem?"
Yeah. Is this the path that he has chosen now?
I remember saying to him like, "No, like, this kid was, you know, he was being a dick, and we got in a little fight, and it's not like we were like adults fighting, where like we were doing real bodily harm on each other,
right?
We were like, you know, probably like wrestling around on the ground and like trying to throw punches at each other. But like they were concerned because I told them that the kid was like trying to like just say we were messing around. And I told him, I said, fuck that. Like that was my exact quote. And I remember telling my parents that and they were just kind of like, oh boy, like what?
Whoa. I was
do that.
Yeah. What do you
like? Listen, like I remember trying to explain it to them. And they're like, all right. But like like I said, I was never like bad. There was a few times in middle school where like I had these like outbursts, but it wasn't like I was crazy or misbehaved. I was just like, I was chill. I was just chilling. And then I threw a desk one time.
Okay. That
was fine. I got suspended for that, but that was fine. Someone pulled my chair out and I fell on the ground super hard.
Right.
And I whipped my desk across the room and they're like, yo, you got to go.
Right. They're like, oh, so I guess I shouldn't do that again.
Yeah, so like it's not like I was ever like this aggressive person. And I think people even now will sort of perceive me that way, and they'll be like think of me like this. Like I said, someone who like seeks confrontation, and it's really not like that at all. I really don't like. I don't even like arguing with people.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And like I don't mind like an intelligent like disagreement with someone else. Like I'm not the kind of person who like enjoys talking about politics or religion or anything like that. Like I'm not going to sit down with someone who's very religious and be like, let's argue our points.
Right.
Because that neither one of us is going to be like at the end of that conversation be like, you know what?
Great point.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way.
Right.
So like I think that's healthy for certain people, but for other people it's pointless. Like for me, I'm not a religious person. I'm not very actively anti-religion. So I really just don't care about it either way. So I don't like confrontation.
Well, I think also just because of, I think there's something to be said about a person's like physical presence as well. And I think, because how tall are you? You're like what, 6'1", 6 foot, or maybe a little taller?
Yeah, I'm like 6'1" or 6. It says 6'2" on my license, but I don't think I'm that tall.
Okay, because I definitely think there's something to be said about like, I mean, I'm 6'1", and like I'm exactly like you in the sense of like I actually actively avoid confrontation. I'll do whatever I possibly can to make sure that I don't get into some weird situation. But there is this weird thing where it's like, because you're tall, there's a weird, some weird connection that people could make in regards to like, oh, they're tall, so like they might be into fighting. I mean, this is an extreme example, but it's like that right. Because of your physical presence, that you're cool with like, you know, getting into somebody's face or doing something like that, and you're comfortable in that. And it's like, no, like that's not the case at all.
Yeah, like I think a lot of it might have to do with people tell me I look mad all the time. And I think I do. Like sometimes my girlfriend will say something. Well, I'll be like watching TV and I won't be mad or anything, and she's just like what's what's up? And I'm just like, and I'll realize like I'll realize like, yeah, I guess I'm making a intensely like aggressive face, but I think that's just my face.
Yeah, you're resting. You have a resting, intense face.
Yeah, I think I guess I just look mad or confused all the time or something. But
right.
I think that has to, because like some people, I think another thing is that I do tend to kind of shit talk a lot of things.
Sure. Another
thing is like I have this tendency of saying that I can beat anyone up. I don't actually think that, but like,
right. It's just funny.
It's funny, and I'll get like fired up and I'll say it, and because I don't know, like I certainly don't think I can beat every person up, but we'll be talking about like a band or something like that, and I'll be getting fired up. I'm like, dude, I could kick that whole band's ass. And like people think it's funny, but like I definitely don't say it in a joking way when I say it. Like I definitely don't actually think I could beat a whole band up. I mean, I'm sure there are bands that I could beat the whole band up.
Sure. In the moment, you're like deadly serious, but then you're like, oh, I don't really mean that.
Yeah, like that. I feel like that's my way. I'll say things in a very serious tone or something like that, and people, I get accused of being an asshole a lot and stuff like that because I say things in a very serious way,
right,
that I don't actually mean, which later on I think is really funny. But then people are just like, yeah, that guy's a dickhead.
Right. No, totally. I mean, you can easily see why people interpret it that way. I wanted to kind of talk about the band in regards to there is a lot of attention being paid to this particular, music scene, as it were, punk, hardcore, whatever you want to call it. And you guys, obviously, in particular, it's like I can't read any sort of press coverage or review of you guys and obviously have it be like, oh, wow, so these guys just basically like, they're the reinvention of grunge. They want to sound like these bands that came from the early 90s. At a certain point, it's like, okay, like I get it, whatever. After the first, 7 or 8 reviews come out of Jar, you get it. But it's like now, that record is close to 2 years old, and people are still speaking about you guys as like you're this sort of one-trick pony. That's like,
right.
Just because you're painted with that brush, I'm sure it kind of gets frustrating for you guys to be painted into that corner.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my thing is, unfortunately, like I said, I'll definitely, before I would actively like look for stuff on the internet about our band just to see, what the kids are saying.
Sure.
And I stopped doing that because I have a hard time with not letting certain things get to me, because sometimes I'll just read I'll just come across someone saying something that's just flat out not true. Like they'll be like, oh, like I heard, Superheaven or Daylight, they did this, or like they said this. And I find it very hard to not contact a random person and be like, I don't know where you heard that, but like that couldn't be more untrue. But I have never done that because I don't want to be the guy in the band that's just like looking for stuff about his own band and then just like gets defensive about everything. So I really I don't seek out that stuff anymore just because it's not worth like the stress. Like I have enough stuff going on. I don't need to worry about what some dumbass kid in Chicago or something that I don't know thinks about me or our band or something like that. Unfortunately, I think with people that keep saying the grunge thing and like, oh, like, yeah, they're just like a Nirvana wannabe band and this and that. Unfortunately, a lot of people who write and review music really don't listen to that much music.
Yeah, they listen to snippets.
Yeah, and they not only that, they really don't have a very wide scope of different kinds of music, which is, I really don't like music reviews. Like I've thought about doing like zines and podcasts and stuff like that. Reviews are like just such a big part of doing a zine or like anything like that, or like a blog or anything like that. And I just want nothing to do with them because I feel like a review is so specific to one person's opinion. I don't think that person should be giving the opinion and potentially turning people off of something that they don't know anything about. Like the term grunge revival is, I hate it.
Yeah.
I really, like I haven't actively said anything about it until right now, but like I hate it. It's the dumbest thing in the world because like the term grunge kind of bothers me on its own, whether it's referred to like Nirvana or Pearl Jam or bands that were specifically grunge bands. If I was like my age now at that time when Nirvana was a band and stuff like that, I think I would refuse to call them grunge at the time. I would just call them rock bands.
Sure.
And that's what I do now. Like,
well, I look at it too from the standpoint where it's like, the word revival obviously is, I mean, it's used in a context where it's like and that's fine. But it's like music, no matter what brush you paint it with, is all cyclical. So of course it makes sense that bands that exist now in the, late 2000s, early 2010s or whatever you call it, are going to be looking for more than just music that existed 10 years ago. It's be like, oh yeah, well, this record came out in the early 90s and like, this is a really cool thing. And it's all cyclical. So it's like, why should that be surprising that it's happening? That's the one thing that I'm always like, well, yeah, I'm never surprised when a musical genre kind of, starts to rise. It's like, well, yeah, because it's been a long time since anybody did that well.
Yeah, and I think like a big part of it is the thing that's frustrating is people are always like, oh, this band just like rips these bands off. There are definitely bands that I could list that flat out rip other specific bands off. Like you'll hear like the exact same melody in a song or the exact like a riff that's like just slightly different. And it's like I say it all the time. There's a very big difference between ripping a band off and drawing influence from a band. And people will be like, oh, that band wants to be Nirvana. They want to be like Silverchair or something like that. And it's like, dude, I promise you I don't want to be any of those bands. Like I don't listen to those bands and think, yo, that's a cool riff. I'm going to rewrite that riff so it sounds a little different.
Right.
Or like, I'm going to rewrite that song. It's like, dude, the record sounds a certain way because like we wrote songs and they naturally sound that way. It's not like we sat down and we're like, all right, the last record was cool and everything, but let's try to sound like this now. Like, it's not like we just started listening to these bands or anything like that. Like Jake's the youngest person in the band and he just turned 23, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I think people who don't know us don't realize that we're not that young. You know what I mean? Like Joe and I were alive through the entire 90s. It's
right.
Not like, we weren't going to shows because we were pretty young, but it's not like we were born in 92 and we're like, yeah, man, we just found out about this Nirvana band. They're super sick.
Right.
And to be honest, like I really like Nirvana, but they're far from my favorite band. And I really don't want to be, people are like, oh man, Taylor Madison, he wants to be Kurt Cobain. I'm like, do I, dude? Like, I feel like if I wanted to be Kurt Cobain, I'd be doing a lot of things differently.
Yeah, you wouldn't be, kind of pulling threads from the punk and hardcore world.
Yeah, not only that, but I don't think Kurt Cobain's that cool. This might be a shocking thing for some people to hear, but
right.
Kurt Cobain's like, I don't idolize Kurt Cobain. I mean, I think he wrote some cool songs. But
he's a deeply flawed individual, as all of us are, and no one has to be put up on a pedestal, especially from the context of where you're coming from, where it's like, oh man, I can't wait to basically rip off his musical career for my benefit right now. Yeah,
at this point, like I'm very adamant about making sure that I don't let anyone's weird or stupid opinion. I try not to take any of it too much to heart because I try not to care what some stranger thinks or anything like that. It kind of sucks because it's so easy for people to just see anything and they'll just believe it. Mm-hmm. So it's annoying when I see people say certain stuff that just kind of isn't true, that I feel like if someone else reads that, they might think it's true and that might turn them off of our band or one of us as a person. And all of us we're pretty down to earth guys. Like it does bother me that we have sort of this reputation as being these sort of like ignorant, like jerk offs. Cause we're not like that. People, it's my fault for the most part, I'm sure, but we have a weird sense of humor and we kind of we're not like the kind of band to be like, go on tour with a band and we're like, oh, best friends. I'm so sad this tour's going to be over. And like, we're best friends with every band. We don't back every band. We've openly beefed with certain bands and a lot of bands don't do that. And I don't think it's anything that like, we don't like actively like,
right.
Let's make sure we like,
this isn't, you're right. This isn't an agenda of yours.
No, not at all. We're just kind of straight up guys and we're really not about the whole like band thing. Like we love being in a band. We love touring with bands, but like, we've never been the kind of band to tour with a band that we just flat out don't like plenty of bands will tour with a band and they really won't get along with them at all. Mm-hmm. They won't let that be known. And I don't think it's always necessary. Like it's one thing to be like civil with a band, but it's another to be like, oh, our friends in this band when behind a closed door, they're like, dude, fuck those guys. They're honestly the worst.
Right.
Cause we've never been about that. Like we can be civil with a band, but to an extent, of course.
Right.
But we'll never like put on for that band. Just flat out don't vibe with them or whatever.
Yeah.
So that and our sense of humor, people we have this reputation of being like these ignorant dickheads, and we're not.
Yeah,
you've met us. We're cool.
No,
you're just regular old guys.
Totally. And I think that because I think people are disarmed by that because you don't feel like you need to play the quote unquote game of because a lot of people, especially once you start to have some sort of notoriety within the context of independent music, some people feel like they have to play. And not even so much a character because most people are still being true to themselves, but they feel like they have to, do things a certain way in order to make sure that the trajectory of their band still goes up, rather than doing what you're talking about in regards to, you know, being like, oh yeah, I don't want to tour with that band because I don't like them. I don't think they're cool people. So yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I wanted to hit on the, like we were talking about earlier or before our conversation, anytime a band has to go through a name change, it sucks. Like it's an awful thing. It's never, you're always going to have people on two sides of the line where it's like, oh, like, that sucks you had to change your name. Dude, why'd you change it to that? That's the fucking worst band name ever of all time now.
Yep.
So I know it's a lot to kind of encapsulate, but you guys had to change your name for legal reasons. Like there was a band that already existed that was kind of, you know, pressing your button, so to speak, or, you know, how did that happen?
We haven't kind of flat out explained the situation, like, openly to like a wide audience. So we've kind of like if, when people ask me about it in person, I'll explain it
right,
specifically why we did it and how it came about. But basically, there's another band called Daylight, and it's really not hard to figure out who the band is. Like, a lot of people ask. And the only reason we kind of didn't, like, when we, like, you know, did the press release or whatever you want to call it, and we announced that we were changing the name, the only reason we didn't kind of like name that band specifically is, one, it's very easy to figure out who it is, and two, we don't know the band. Like, I don't like the band as a band,
sure,
but we don't really know them as people, so I don't find any reason giving them a hard time about their name when it really, they had the name first, you know what I mean? It's not like, and the thing is that people don't realize is they didn't threaten legal action.
Mm-hmm.
We've known about the band for years,
right?
But we found out recently that they own the trademark to the name internationally.
Okay,
so it's not like they, you know, they like
a cease and desist or whatever.
Yeah, nothing like that. And but it's just a thing that would inevitably become an issue.
Sure. Well,
so
I look at, like, just to stop your story, I look at it in the same way that, like, you know, American Nightmare, Give Up the Ghost. Like, I specifically remember, I don't think I've ever done this before, but like when that random bar band, American Nightmare from Boston, sued American Nightmare, the hardcore band, I was so mad because it was like this American Nightmare Boston band was like, you could just tell was like a bar band. Like, they didn't tour, they didn't do anything. And so, like, I think to me, that's what enraged me the most, where it was like, this band, yeah, they may have the legal ramifications to do this, but dude, you're like ripping this band's rug out from underneath them, and you're not even doing anything with it. But like in your guys' case, like, it's a total, you know, it's a respectful story in regards to, okay, like, yeah, this band has the copyright, et cetera, this will eventually be a problem. Yeah, there's no ill will towards that. It's just a matter of like, well, I guess we should do this now.
It really sucks because I kind of, for a few years now, I've just been kind of like, the more things have progressed and the more, I feel like every one of our releases has done better than the one before it, which is cool. And it's just been, like I said, it's been like a slow, steady climb. Once things sort of started taking, for lack of a better term, more of a professional turn, we had to get, like, you know, like, become an LLC. And, you know, once you have like a booking agent and manager and stuff like that, you kind of think about more things that you wouldn't, you know, that we didn't think about like a year ago, where it was like one of the things being the name, where I kind of was always like, I hope I don't have to change the name because we have quite a few releases out under this name, and that's been our name for a while. Once we put the LP out, we were like, let's look into it. Let's try to copyright the name if we can before someone else does. Like, now's the time where we need to do this. So once that process was sort of looked into, we found out that other band does in fact own the trademark internationally, which is pretty extensive to own the trademark to anything internationally. So there's really no getting around it. It's like, okay, well, what are we going to keep putting out records and shirts and stuff with a name that we know that maybe a month or even a couple of years from now we're going to have to change? Like, why go any further under this name when we know we're going to have to change it? So let's just do it now.
Sure. Why delay the inevitable?
Yeah. So like then the long process, grueling process of having to come up with a new name started. And I can't even, like, when people give us a hard time about the name or changing the name or how like they like the name Daylight better, it really does kind of bother me because, one, I don't really understand the connection to the name. Like, I don't know why people are so hung up on it. A name is just a name.
Right.
Another thing is that I just bothers me that people don't even think about the fact that, like, it has been a real pain in the ass for us. Like, coming up with a name was a most unpleasant process, as I'm sure anyone who has ever been in a band and had to name a band, a new band, knows. It sucks. Naming a band is like the worst thing ever. So having to rename your band is the actual worst thing ever.
Right. Uproot everything that has been known and the public perception, and then be able to be like, okay, well, this is what it's hard.
And I mean, a lot of stuff that I don't think people think about went into, it's not like you just change your name and boom, you print some new t-shirts and that's that. Like, it is that, but you have to think about, like, we had a bunch of other merch that had this old name on it. We have a web store that has all this merch with our old name on it that we have to get rid of. And, you know, like, some people were psyched to buy it. Other people are like, why am I going to buy this merch of a band that technically doesn't exist? It's like shit that I would never even think about. Like, none of that stuff matters to me. Just when people act like, oh man, like, it sucks that they changed their name, like, blah blah, like, I'm so pissed. I'm like, yo man, what are you mad? What are you upset for? Like, we're still the same band. We still write the same songs. We still play the same songs.
Yeah,
we're the ones who had to, like, we have to deal with people whining about it and just, like, giving us a hard time about it and saying our new name's stupid and, like, it's like the worst name ever, this and that. And it's like, dude, it sucks, man. Like, it's a scary thing to have to, because, like, you change your name, you're like, well, people might not, like, realize it, and they might not, like a lot of people just straight up didn't realize it happened. Like, we got a couple emails of people being like, yo, what happened to your guys' band? Like, I liked you guys on Facebook, and, like, all of your social networks disappeared. And we were like, oh, well, here's why we changed our name. People were like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like, a frustrating thing. And, like, you think about, like, when you tour and people might not have gotten the memo. So, like, some people might miss you playing their town because they have no idea who the hell Superheaven is.
Right. Which
is fine. Like, it's just, like, it's an unfortunate thing. But the biggest bummer about it is that a lot of people are so negative about it. And it's just like, I don't understand people caring about it.
Right. Because realistically, from your perspective, the way that they interact with you as fans or whatever you want to call them isn't going to change. Like you said, you're still putting out the same sort of music. Like, that's not, like, nothing is changing on a surface level. It's like the only thing that's going to change is that you are going to purchase a piece of clothing and or record that will have a different name on it. And that's it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, my favorite band is Failure. And they've been a band for a long time. Like, at this point, you know, over 15 years. I mean, they stopped being a band for a while, obviously, but we're putting out records in the 90s and stuff like that, and they're my favorite band. And if they change their band name now, I don't think I would give one shit.
Yeah.
So that I mean, it might just be me. It just doesn't make sense to why a name. Like, people are really upset about it. Like, some people are, like, really aggressive about it on the internet, and, like, those people were pretty cool. Like, the first shows that we played at Superheaven were the shows with nothing. Mm-hmm. And people were really cool. Like, there really weren't that many people who, like, voiced an actual distaste for the name.
Right.
So every night, you know, that was when we were on stage, I was like, if anyone has, I would bring it up, and a couple times people would be like, yeah, like, I don't get it. And I was like, well, hey, like, can I ask you, like, what your issue with it is? And they're like, well, I like Daylight more. I'm like, well, that's not a valid reason.
Right. Sorry. This is the new reality.
Yeah, like, I don't mind hearing people's, like, opinions if someone's like, oh, like, blah, blah, blah. I can't think of one single reason that's legitimate for someone to care, like, more than being like, oh, well, that's a bummer. Like, I think that's the angriest I would get about a band changing their name.
Right. The last thing I want to hit on before I let you go is you've spoken about this openly before, but I think that it's something that I want to address with you is your stepfather, when he passed away. That was, like, what, 4 years or so ago?
Maybe 3.
3, okay. So, yeah, relatively recent. Because, yeah, it is one of those things where it's like, I mean, my actual biological father, he passed away, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago now. And so, but I've had, like you, I went through divorce when I was really young, and my stepdad is such a huge factor in my life. But at the same time, there's always that weird, like, well, he isn't my actual dad. He's physically present, but, you know, there's all those. Right. But I find it so cool that you obviously have, you created such a relationship with him regardless, because you've obviously knew no other circumstance than being in the same house with him and stuff like that. And so the notion that some people have this weird relationship with their step-parents, you know, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, when people that you know have, like, kind of estranged relationships with their step-parents because they're not my real mom or dad, is it weird for you to kind of see that?
Not at all, because I I think that some kids, depending on their age, can be pretty unreasonable with stuff like that. Like, I feel like if you're over the age of 18 and you have a step parent, you really, unless you have like a reason, unless that step parent is actually legitimately awful, then like I feel like you just have to be mature enough about it to be like, yo, my mom or dad is like a an adult and really date or marry or whatever, whoever they want. And like as their child, you really don't have any actual ground to stand on for being like, oh, well, I don't like that person. Unless they're really like I said, if they're legitimately awful and they're like, they don't treat your parent well or you, then I think I can understand a younger kid being like, oh, well, my stepdad, like I don't get along with my stepdad or my stepmom. And like, cause my relationship with my stepdad wasn't that great for the most part. Like we were close in the fact that he was like my second father because he was around pretty much my whole life. But we had like a pretty weird relationship to where like we loved each other and like it was definitely like at times like a real father-son bond. But for lack of a better term, there was like a lot of like abuse that took place. Like I feel like he didn't like my dad. So like, and it wasn't based on very much other than the fact that he used to be married to my mom. Some of that was like taken out on me sometimes. And like,
oh, sure. So yeah, he was ill feelings that he had towards your father because of that weird relationship. Obviously he couldn't do anything to your father, so you're kind of there by default.
Yeah, well, and I think another thing was like his dad kind of like abandoned him when he was like pretty young, like literally just like disappeared. I think, and then his stepfather was like his father, like treated him really well. Like once he came into the picture, he was like his dad, you know what I mean? And I think he wanted that with me, but I've always had a really good relationship with my actual father. So it's not like, so I think he was sort of like, I think that like bothered him. And, so like he was like he wasn't abusive to where like he hit like me or my sisters or my mom, but he was like, it has happened before where I was like hit by him, but like, it wasn't the kind of thing where like it was a regular thing, like in the movie, like Radio Flyer, where like I was getting my ass kicked like regularly for no reason.
Oh, sure.
But like there was definitely like weird like emotional abuse and stuff like that where like he kind of like act really weird and sort of like put me down for no real legitimate reason. But I've always kind of like considered myself to be sort of like a logical thinker. So like I feel like even when I was young, I kind of like took it to like I recognized the fact that like it had a lot to do with him not liking my dad and him wanting more of like a father-son relationship with me. And I don't think any of that like excused like some of his whack behavior, but like I looked at him as like my other father. So like there's definitely like a weird relationship. Like I attribute a lot of like some weird character flaws that I have as an adult. I attribute to some of like his behavior towards me when I was younger and like didn't really deserve any of it. Like I wasn't like I said, I wasn't a bad kid. Not like I was getting in trouble all the time or anything like that. So I definitely hold some sort of like resentment towards him even now. Like I definitely like miss him and like I loved him like a dad, you know what I mean?
I think it's a really important picture that you paint there, because like no matter what our relationships with, either our actual biological parents or step parents, there's always going to be shades of weirdness, because like we were talking about earlier, it's like everyone's flawed, everyone has their own baggage and issues to come to the table with. But it's cool that you can view your relationship with him as you are currently, where it's like, okay, I see why he may have been shitty to me at these instances. You see the causal connection to it, as opposed to some people that look at that relationship in a negative light, being like, oh, that person was terrible to me, but then never really like looking at why,
Yeah, he wasn't like, he was like a good guy, you know what I mean? He wasn't like
right.
a bad person or anything like that. Like he had a pretty weird upbringing, and he was like, I don't want to say like a criminal, but he like had like, he was pretty outlawish, you know what I mean? Like he had been in prison, and like he was previously been into some pretty heavy stuff, but like it's not like he was like a bad person. He wasn't like just an evil guy where he was just like he like really cared about me and my mom, and like, because all my siblings none of them are my full siblings, or like half sisters, and my brother's not even like technically my stepbrother because my dad and his mom aren't married, but like we grew up as brothers. But like he's always been very like caring to me and my mom and my sisters. I never looked at him as like a bad person, you know?
Sure. That's awesome. I'm glad that, yeah, you can view the relationship in a positive light as opposed to, you know, some people that may take it a different direction. So I could talk to you for forever, but I think that would be mean to subject people to listening to you and I for another hour. So
I don't know, man. I feel like we got some good things to say. I feel like we should, you want to be on my podcast?
Yeah, of course, dude. We can, I'm more than happy and willing to do whatever you need. So that is that. What a sweet dude, right? Like, you know, he comes across, like he was mentioning earlier, like a little gruff. He's a great dude. And so never be intimidated by him by going up to him after a show and just being like, hey, what's up, man? Anyways, the producer for the show is Tom Richfield. Visit thenativesound.com because you will get 10% off your order. 10%. That's a lot of money off if you enter the word 100 words at checkout. And next week, the guest is Nick from the Swellers. He's going to talk to us about breaking the band up and all the emotional distress that takes, plus what you do after a band breaks up. And so much more fun stuff. 100wordspodcast.com. Hang out with us. Be part of this family. And until next week, be safe. Everybody,